Welcome to the Psychology World podcast. I'm Connor Whiteley, bringing you psychology news, articles, and other interesting psychology-related articles. Where I can find the podcast notes and more interesting psychology-related things, and you can get your free 8 psychology book box set at connorwhiteley.net. Now let's get on to the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 112 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, and today's episode is on how is therapy different from talking with parents and friends. So the reason why I wanted to do today's episode was that I know this podcast is mainly for psychology students and psychology professionals, but I really wanted to address this topic a bit more because I know that I don't need to tell you all about the difference because we just sort of know it. But if we work in a clinical psychology or mental health, whether it's now or in the future, there may be times when one, people challenge our work because they see therapy as a pointless and people only need to talk to their friends and family, or two, you might get a client that needs this to be explained to them because they might not want to be here, or in the therapy room, so they might need you to talk to them about it just so they know the difference. So that's come out in the content part of today's episode, and is Saturday the 18th of September 2021 as I record this. So moving on to Psychology News section, we're reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest. And there's some interesting articles here, like the first one. First-hand reports of brain fog highlight struggles of those living with long COVID. Around 1 in 5 of those who have recovered from COVID-19 report ongoing symptoms, also known as long COVID. Experiences with this new condition are varied, and several symptoms are neuropsychological in nature. One such symptom is a brain fog. Though not a medical diagnosis in itself, this term is recognised by many health professionals and refers to a fluctuation and varied set of symptoms which severely affect the sufferer's ability to think clearly or conduct their lives as they previously have. At this stage, understanding of the experience of brain fog in long COVID is important. In order to tackle a new condition, researchers must first obtain a further description of the problem. This is a starting point from which further research can truly begin. To this end, researchers based at Oxford University have reported qualitative data gathered over the course of remotely held focus groups, during which participants discussed their own symptoms and commented on each other's experiences with brain fog following COVID. So there's not a lot to say about this article, to be honest, except that this just shows that we've got to be doing more research into long COVID because this is becoming more and more common. For example, I remember an article or news section done by Sky News about that younger people are much more likely to get long COVID compared to older adults, so when they get COVID. So that needs to be addressed. So long COVID will definitely start to happen more and more, and it's already fairly common. So sadly, this is something that we've got to find out about because hopefully new treatment options will be developed. So the next one is the Medusa Effect. We ascribe less mind to people we see in pictures. Oh, right, this sounds interesting. Much has been written about the downside of home working. Zoom fatigue, in particular, is now a term and an experience that many of us are familiar with. Well, thankfully, because my university mainly on Teams, and to be honest, you didn't really need to do a lot of the team stuff, and you didn't really need to do that much online stuff. So thankfully, I never suffered from Zoom fatigue or any sort of teleconferencing fatigue. But I do understand it because no one wants to spend tons of time on a Zoom or a certain program each and every day. Sometimes we just want to go and see people. So back to the article. But the tiring effect of video chat, that's the word I was looking for, could represent only one of its dangers. According to a new work in PNAS, it finds that we ascribe less mind to people we see in image form versus in the flesh, and even less again to images of people. There could be serious implications, write the authors. Open quote. Given that mind perception underpins moral judgment, our findings suggest that depicted persons will receive greater or less ethical consideration depending on the level of extraction, close quote. So there are actually quite a lot of interesting applications and implications when it comes to this article because just from the top of my head I can actually see a few. For example, tons of job interviews are being done over Zoom and over video chat. Does this make a person less likely to be selected for a job? Because of course, to the interviewers, this isn't necessarily a real person; it's just an image. So very interesting, and it'd be good to see a bit more research into that. Okay, so the last one is we've neglected the role of psychological richness when considering what makes a good life. Studies argue. What is it that makes someone feel that their life is a good life? Of all the ideas put forward over the past few millennium, two are most often in vogue and researched today. The first is the hedonistic well-being, often called simply happiness, which is characterized by plenty of positive emotion and a general life satisfaction. The other is a very hard to pronounce word, moina, which I've completely butchered. Feeling that your life has a meaning and that you're realising your potential. Now, a new paper suggests that we've been missing something, psychological richness, which I do definitely understand, because you do hear people talk about from time to time that they've got a rich life, they've got a rich fulfilled life, and to that richness that says that your life has great depth, and it contains lots of things that make you happy. So maybe, and this is something that I do tend to think about psychology research though, is that we always need to be looking for new factors and new ways to expand the research, just so we can make sure that we capture every possible factor that could influence a particular behaviour. And this is no exception. And no, actually, we're going to do one more because I forgot this one at the bottom. Domestic violence increased during lockdown in the United States, and it actually increased in a lot of other places. From the very beginning of the pandemic, activists and charities raised concerns that lockdown could be having an impact on domestic violence. Women's Aid noted that home is often an unsafe environment for those experiencing abuse, whilst earlier this year, Refuge stated that they've seen a 60% increase in monthly calls to their National Domestic Abuse Helpline. A new study published in Psychology of Violence looks at rates of intimate partner violence during the pandemic in the United States. Like data from the UK, it suggests that domestic violence increases during the lockdown, and this was particularly linked to stress. And this is something that I want to highlight because, to be honest, I'm not actually going to go into it because I'm just going to speak a bit more general. Basically, we've got to become more aware of domestic violence, and we've got to stand up to it. So because domestic violence is not okay, and we should empower the sufferers and the victims of domestic abuse to get help and just escape the cycle of abuse. So that's something that we've just got to work on as a whole, as a society. So that's enough for the psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. So moving on to the personal update. So this week has mainly been quite a scramble, to be honest, because I've been really working hard on doing these blog posts for the next few months. So I'm trying to write all the blog posts, and then I'm going to start recording today for some of the episodes. Ideally, I do want to get up to the end of December, and I have got blog posts up to the end of December. So we're going to be covering some great topics. We're going to be covering stuff like relationships, biological psychology, cognitive psychology, personality psychology, clinical psychology. So there's absolutely plenty of great episodes that you're going to love, and I really am looking forward to sharing them with you. So there's a lot of great stuff coming up on the podcast. So after I record this, I'm going to record some other content parts of the episodes. But as I've got two podcasts, and I sort of need to prepare both a podcast, it's going to take a bit of a time. But I really do love podcasting, so it won't be a problem. But the only other thing that I wanted to mention was people who use LinkedIn. Wow, I really do admire you and people who actually focus on LinkedIn as their social network, because for the psychology placement that I'll be starting on next week, I had to do a lot more on LinkedIn, so I spent half an hour on it, and I was like, wow, how do people actually do this? Because it really just shows that I really am not into social media, because I actually had no idea that LinkedIn could actually do so much. And as always, I always love to know your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So you can always email me, connorwhiteley@connorwhiteley.net. You can always leave a comment on the show notes at connorwhiteley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi-whiteley. I always love to hear from all of you. And today's episode has been sponsored by Formulation in Psychotherapy. This is an absolutely brilliant book I absolutely love. It's probably my second favourite book after Criminal Profiling, because Formulation in Psychotherapy is where mental health needs to go. And if you want to work in clinical psychology, mental health, you've got to read it, you've got to be aware of it, because this is such a brilliant area that we all need to sort of help mental health shift in this absolutely brilliant direction where we tailor make the therapy to the client just so we can increase the chance of therapeutic success. So I cannot recommend this great, easy to understand book enough, and this is really going to help you if you want to work in clinical psychology and mental health. So I cannot recommend it enough. So that is a formulation in psychotherapy, available from all major ebook retailers, and you can order the paperback, hard print and large print versions from Amazon, your local bookstore and local library if you requested. And if you want to order the ebook directly from me, then please go to payhip.com/Connor Whiteley. And if you don't want to buy a book, but you still want to give me a bit of one-time support, then you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. And both these options are great ways to support the podcast and help cover the times of me producing, editing and recording the show up, because it does take quite a while. So on to the content part of today's episode. So, moving on to the content part of today's episode. So, we're going to be talking about how is therapy different from talking with parents and friends. So, I already explained earlier in the episode why we need to talk about this, even though we're mainly psychology students and psychology professionals here. But I still think it's really important, because you never know when this knowledge or when this comparison might be useful in real life. So, how is therapy different from talking with our closer friends? So most of the time when we experience a difficulty, talking to our parents and friends, it's all we need, because they know us, they know how we think, and they know our friendship groups, so they're bound to know us very well, and sometimes this is all that we need. Because of this, friends and family are likely to do some helpful things. For example, take sides, add their opinion, comfort us, say comforting things like everything's going to be okay, there are plenty more fish in the sea, and they're also likely to change the conversation, take our minds off our troubles, or our problems, and they're also likely to compare our stories to others, such as if you're telling them about a breakup, they might recall someone else telling them about theirs and compare the two. Overall, this can be great for our mental health, because sometimes all we need is to talk to someone and then the other person may just tell us their opinions, offer some lay advice and comfort us. I think we can all think of various times when this is all that we've needed. For example, this has been after traumatic events, but I would still unofficially say therapy for really traumatic events, as well as bad reserves at a university. However, this is all well and good, but this isn't enough sometimes, and sometimes we need we need the extremely skilled touch of a therapist to help us. So why is why is talking to a therapist different than parents and friends? So building on the last section, a therapist is different than talking to parents and friends, because they have different priorities and they have training that your parents and friends don't. Granted that this podcast is mainly aimed at psychology people, and our friends actually are likely to have that training, so I just had to laugh when I wrote that bit, because granted most of us, we know clinical psychologists, we know people with the psychology training, so I'm not exactly sure that section applies to all of us. But it definitely will to our clients. Anyway, when a client talks to a therapist can help the client to learn more about themselves, their difficulties, and how to improve, and they can provide a more in-depth support that a friend and family couldn't. Then, depending on the therapeutic model the therapist uses, a number of things could happen afterwards. For example, if you have a cognitive therapist, then they can help the client to change their faulty thinking patterns and improve their lives and mental health that way, whereas a systemic therapist would focus on the family system. Conclusion. So the different lies in parents and family members are mainly for comforting and telling you everything will be okay, whereas the therapists have two simple jobs. They're there to alleviate psychological distress and improve lives, with therapists mainly are doing that by the therapeutic alliance and using their psychological expertise in conjunction with the client. Of course, depending on the model in question, because different models have different emphasis on the therapeutic alliance, like cognitive, that doesn't place as much of an emphasis compared to other models on the therapeutic alliance. And this is why I love this area of clinical psychology, and that's why I cannot recommend formulation in psychotherapy enough. So to finish today's episode, I really do just want to say that both friends and the family and the therapist are needed by our clients, since they need us, the psychology professionals, to apply our psychological expertise to their difficulties and to themselves. yet they still need the social support of their families and friends. So, well, what we do has the long-term benefits and they don't relapse. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and I really hope that you got something out of it, because I really do think that this would be useful to know for the future, just in case we're ever challenged, or in case we ever need to explain to someone why seeking professional help might be better than talking to their friends and family about it. But of course, sometimes, and to be honest, most of the time, all that we need when we experience a mental health drop is just to talk to our friends and family. So if you know someone who would enjoy today's episode, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help us spread the word about the podcast. And please check out Formulation in Psychotherapy. I really do recommend it, and it's available in all of the usual places. It's an absolutely brilliant book. And if you want, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Whiteley. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see the show notes, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. And if you want a free 8-book psychology box set, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.